You know that feeling you get when you're reading the Old Testament? That strange disconnect, where the God of love you've heard about seems like a completely different being from the angry, wrathful entity on the page? What if I told you that feeling wasn't a failure of your faith? What if it was the first glimmer of a truth that's been deliberately hidden for 2,000 years?
To find it, we have to go back, way back, to a single evening in Galilee, and to a conversation so dangerous, the powers that be would spend the next 2 millennia trying to bury it.
So picture this. Jesus is with his inner circle, and they're reading from the Torah. They've just read a passage from Exodus, one of those parts where God commands his people to slaughter entire cities, every man, woman, and child. And the silence in the room afterwards, well, it's deafening. Finally, Peter, who is just reeling from this, can't take it anymore. He breaks the silence and asks the question that's burning in all of their minds. How can the Father of infinite love that Jesus talks about be the same being who demands this kind of bloodshed and rage?
And this is when Jesus drops the bombshell. He looks at them, and he tells them plainly, the God they just read about, the one demanding destruction and calling himself jealous, that is not his Father. He is an imposter.
He even gave this entity a name, the Aldebaoth, also known as the Demiurge, the chief Archon, the architect of this material prison. This, right here, is the core Gnostic teaching that was systematically hunted down and destroyed. Why? Because if people realized the God they were taught to fear was actually a cosmic fraud, the whole system of control would just collapse. Okay, so to really wrap your head around this, you have to understand we're talking about two completely different beings, two opposing frequencies that have been intentionally mashed together into one to confuse us. On one side, you have the monad, the true Father. This isn't a person. It's infinite, unified consciousness. It just is. It doesn't get jealous or angry because it is everything. And on the other side, you have the Demiurge, the builder of the material world, a deeply insecure being who is terrified of you remembering where you came from, who demands constant worship, and whose favorite tool is fear. And just think about the language Jesus used. This is so important. He never used the Old Testament titles, Yahweh, Jehovah, El Shaddai, never. He consistently and only used the term Father, Abba. He was drawing a massive, unmistakable line in the sand. But it gets better. Jesus then pointed out that you don't even have to take his word for it. The Demiurge snitches on himself in his own book. There are 5 direct confessions hidden in plain sight that expose his true nature. The first confession is his name, his actual, self-proclaimed identity. The text is crystal clear. It doesn't say he sometimes feels jealous. It says his name is jealous. It's his core identity. Now, why is this a dead giveaway? Simple. An infinite, all-powerful, all-knowing being has absolutely nothing to be jealous of. Jealousy comes from a fear of loss. It's a sign of insecurity. It's the emotion of a lesser being who knows there's something greater than him and is terrified you'll find it. Confession number 2 is even more blatant. It's a straight-up admission of his role in all the chaos.
He says it himself right there in Isaiah. I create evil. Not I allow evil to test you. No, I create evil.
You see, the true source, the monad, is pure unity. It just emanates. It doesn't operate in opposites. The Demiurge, on the other hand, is the architect of duality. He designed the whole game of good versus evil, light versus dark, us versus them. It's a trap designed to keep us in endless conflict. The third confession. Well, this one's pretty grim. It reveals his appetite, what he feeds on.
All through the Old Testament, there is a bizarre obsession with blood sacrifice. Pages and pages of detailed instructions on how to kill animals. And the text repeats over and over that the smell of burning flesh is a pleasing aroma to this God.
From the Gnostic viewpoint, this isn't worship. It's an energy harvesting operation. They taught that these archons, these lower dimensional beings, literally feed on low-frequency energy, the raw terror and pain released at the moment of a violent death. The entire sacrificial system was a spiritual feeding trough. Confession number 4 exposes the system of control. How he doesn't just enslave individuals, but entire family lines. Think about that for a second. Punishing children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren for something their ancestor did. You are literally born into debt.
That's not divine justice. That is a system of spiritual enslavement. It's designed to lock a soul's lineage into a perpetual cycle of guilt and fear, ensuring they never wake up to their own power and sovereignty.
And finally, the fifth confession. This one is subtle, but it reveals everything about his limited awareness.
He declares that he's the Alpha and the Omega, that nothing existed before him. Now that sounds like ultimate power, right? But to the Gnostics, it was a confession of ultimate ignorance.
This is exactly why the Gnostics called him sackless, the fool. He wasn't lying. He genuinely believes he's the only God, because his consciousness is trapped. He's blind to the true infinity of the monad that exists outside his little material sandbox. So, Jesus didn't just expose this cosmic con artist and leave his disciples hanging. He gave them the key, a simple, foolproof test for the soul so you can always know the difference. And it's this simple. Any voice, whether it's from a pulpit, a book, or inside your own head, that operates on fear, guilt, control, and blind obedience, that is the frequency of the Demiurge. But any voice that reminds you of your own divinity, your inherent wholeness, and your absolute freedom, that is the resonance of the monad. And this is the real game changer, that deep, unsettling feeling you've always had about those violent scriptures. That was not a lack of faith, not at all. That was your divine spark, your true self, recognizing the frequency of a predator and recoiling. It was your soul's alarm system going off. Which brings us to the final point, and the most important one, how to reclaim your own divine spark. Because that is the freedom that comes with knowing this truth. The very moment you see the imposter for what he is, the entire matrix of religious control built around him just loses all its power. The fear of hell, the guilt of original sin, it all just dissolves into nothing. Because here's the ultimate secret. You are not a fallen, broken sinner in need of salvation from some angry sky god. That's his story to keep you small. The truth is, you are a literal spark of the divine monad itself, having a human experience to remember your own godhood. Freedom doesn't come from being saved. It comes from remembering. So, if this truth resonates deep in your soul, I invite you right now to declare your spiritual sovereignty. First, go to the comments and type, "I am monad, not Demiurge." Second, subscribe for more of these advanced teachings. And third, like this explainer to boost the signal and help this truth reach others who are ready for it. This knowledge was buried for 2 millennia for one reason. It is the key to liberation. The church feared it, the Gnostics died protecting it, and Jesus himself revealed it. Now it's yours. The only question left is, what are you going to do with it?